You're about to dive into the truth that the scammers don't want you to know. So if you're ready to unmask the lies and protect yourself from the latest scams, subscribe now. Hit that button before it's too late.
The Comandante, an introduction to Fidel Castro. Fidel Castro. The name alone evokes strong emotions, stirring memories of a turbulent era. To some, he was a revolutionary hero, a beacon of hope for the oppressed. He fought for the poor and challenged imperialism, standing up against powerful adversaries. To others, he was a ruthless dictator whose reign was marked by fear and repression. He suppressed dissent and trampled on human rights, silencing those who opposed him. His life was a complex tapestry of triumph and tragedy, idealism and oppression woven together. Castro's Cuba stood as a defiant symbol against the United States, a thorn in its side. This was especially true during the Cold War, when tensions were at their peak. His defiance resonated throughout Latin America and the developing world, inspiring many. Castro's legacy remains fiercely debated even today, years after his death, with opinions divided. He was a charismatic leader whose presence commanded attention and respect. Castro inspired millions with his revolutionary zeal and unwavering commitment. But his iron-fisted rule left many questioning his methods and the cost of his revolution. Understanding Fidel Castro means grappling with these contradictions and complexities. It means examining the man behind the myth, the leader behind the legend. This essay will delve into the life and legacy of Fidel Castro, exploring his impact. We will explore his early years, the Cuban Revolution, his socialist reforms, and his tumultuous relationship with the United States. Finally, we will examine the complex and often contradictory legacy he left behind, a legacy that continues to shape Cuba and the world. Seeds of Revolution, Castro's early life and education. Fidel Castro was born in 1926 in Biran, Cuba, a small rural town in the eastern part of the island. His father, Angel Castro, was a wealthy sugarcane farmer who had emigrated from Spain. Young Fidel's early years were comfortable, marked by privilege and access to resources that many Cubans lacked. However, he witnessed the stark inequality that plagued Cuban society, with vast differences between the rich and the poor. Castro pursued a law degree at the University of Havana, where he was exposed to new ideas and political theories. During his university years, he became increasingly involved in student activism, participating in numerous protests. He was drawn to Marxist ideology, which offered a critique of the capitalist system and a vision for a more equitable society. He began to question the social and economic injustices prevalent in Cuba. Castro's political consciousness grew and he became more vocal. He participated in protests against the corrupt government of President Ramón Grau San Martin, demanding change. He even joined an expedition to overthrow the Dominican dictator Rafael Trujillo, showcasing his commitment to revolutionary ideals. Although the expedition failed, it solidified Castro's commitment to revolutionary change and his resolve to fight for justice. His experiences at university shaped his worldview, making him more determined to address the issues facing his country. He developed a deep sense of social justice, believing that every Cuban deserved equal rights and opportunities. He became convinced that armed struggle was the only way to overthrow the Batista regime and achieve true independence for Cuba. These beliefs would ultimately lead him to launch the Cuban Revolution, a pivotal moment in Cuban history. The Cuban Revolution from guerrilla warfare to triumph. In 1953, Fidel Castro, along with his brother Raúl and a small band of revolutionaries, launched an audacious attack on the Moncada barracks in Santiago de Cuba. This marked the beginning of their long struggle for freedom. Their goal was to spark a popular uprising against the oppressive military dictatorship of Fulgencio Batista. Unfortunately, the attack failed. Many of Castro's comrades were killed in the attempt, a heavy price for their daring move. He and Raúl were captured and imprisoned, facing an uncertain future. However, the event catapulted Castro into the national spotlight, making him a symbol of resistance. His impassioned defense speech during his trial, "History will absolve me," became a rallying cry for the Cuban people, inspiring many to join the cause. After being released from prison in 1955, Castro went into exile in Mexico, where he continued to plan for the revolution. There he met Ernesto Che Guevara, an Argentine doctor with strong Marxist convictions, who would become his close ally. Together they formed a revolutionary alliance, united by their shared vision for a free Cuba. They began meticulously planning their return to Cuba, determined to overthrow Batista's regime. In 1956, Castro, Guevara, and 80 other revolutionaries landed in Cuba aboard the Granma yacht, ready to ignite the revolution. They launched a guerrilla war against the Batista regime, fighting in the mountains and countryside. Despite early setbacks, their ranks swelled with disillusioned peasants and idealistic students who were inspired by their cause. After 2 years of relentless fighting, the rebels marched triumphantly into Havana on January 1, 1959. Batista fled the country, marking the end of his rule. The Cuban Revolution had succeeded, forever changing the course of the nation's history. A new Cuba. Castro's reforms and socialist vision. With the triumph of the revolution, Fidel Castro embarked on a radical transformation of Cuban society. He implemented sweeping socialist reforms. These aimed to eradicate poverty, inequality, and illiteracy. One of Castro's most significant moves was the nationalization of industries and businesses. He expropriated American-owned companies. These included sugar mills and banks. This move angered the United States, which responded with economic sanctions. The sanctions would cripple the Cuban economy for decades. Castro prioritized education and healthcare. He made them universally accessible. Literacy rates soared. Cuba became a leader in healthcare. This was despite its limited resources. These achievements earned Castro admiration from many, particularly in the developing world. He also implemented agrarian reform. He redistributed land to peasants. This was a popular move. However, it led to a decline in agricultural production. This contributed to food shortages. Castro's vision was to create a more equitable society, but his reforms came at a cost.
Unmasking the truth. Fight against scammers. Don't let scammers win. Subscribe now to expose more lies. Hit subscribe. Whoosh.